Hi, everyone. This is Jason Holland. I'm the owner and travel butler at Travel Simplicity. I have the pleasure today of being joined by a man of all things Latin. His name is Eric, and he's a friend of mine. We happened to meet in Colombia, and today I want to hear some stories from him and share some as well. I don't know what we're going to talk about, but hello, Eric.
Hello, Jason. Nice to be here, and thanks
Thank
for
you.
picking me to share my stories. And looking forward to sharing this with everyone. So, my name is Eric Sheets,
Eric,
as
first,
Jason.
uh, Eric, first, before I have to say, we've got to talk about that picture behind you. Can you stop sharing your screen for a minute? What is behind your head?
Okay, what's behind me is basically an outing from one of the National Geographic expedition boats between two islands, probably the youngest islands in the Galapagos. And what makes this area so fascinating is that because of the very little traffic this area receives, many crustaceans or dolphins like to congregate in this channel, which is about 3 to 4 miles of width. So these guys behind me are in a dinghy, or a panga in Spanish, and they're off and about to look at orcas and certain whales, dolphins, all come together for a feeding frenzy. So
Are you able to move to the side a little bit so we can see the boat?
there we go. You can see the expedition boat on the background, and you can see some of the guests probably around right before dinner time.
Yeah.
Because some guests are older, or you could say less active. These are usually the guests that are where the guy says, "Hey, are you up to skipping dinner or eating later? And we're going to go out to go hunt." Well, the verb's not hunt, but we're going to go out and seek some views of orcas, and if we're lucky, dolphins and other sea mammals.
So a lot of people, at least a lot of my clients and potential clients, the Galapagos is enticing, right? People want to visit the Galapagos. What is it? What's one of the things you absolutely love about the Galapagos?
Um, I've been to a few parts of the world, and most of the parts, I would say, animals are fearful of man. In the Galapagos, the whole paradigm has shifted in the sense that animals are fearless of man. So where if you're on an island having a coffee, a Galapagos coffee, you'll see the birds come up to you and right on the table and say good morning. Not necessarily asking for some parts of your breakfast, but so and you'll see an iguana come up to your feet. So animals just think you're part of their ecosystem, which is not something you would find in Africa or Asia or most places on the planet. So I think that's something that it's not really spoken about, that fearlessness of nature.
Interesting. Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate you sharing. So what other stories do you have for us today? I saw
Okay,
I saw one that you put up there.
okay. So why would I talk about a lonely antique car, Chevy 1958, like this on this street? It looks like a street that happened probably after Carnival in Rio, but it's actually Havana. Havana at sunset, probably around 5 p.m. and actually, this is how the streets actually look many times. They're not full of thousands of people.
Really?
Um, and some of the this is old Havana, and if you're walking down these doors, you'll actually hear an amazing array of cacophonia sounds, from the conga drums to a woman singing from the balcony, and from people washing their clothes. Things that probably happened in our society 75 years ago, and in this case, they are present every day part of the language and
Mhm.
the communication of these people. And there's no phones, there's no cell phones, so it's incredibly invigorating, because here you are in a society that doesn't have any type of form of commercialism. There's no advertising. There's no signs in this image,
Hmm.
but there's an incredible amounts of sounds of life. And so that juxtaposition of an empty street with and lots of sounds and life is what makes this image and this
So if you,
city one of my favorites.
so Eric, if you and I were walking down this street, where's one of the places that you'd want to take me? Where's one of those places that you absolutely love?
I'm very serendipitous about my journeys. You probably would never want to hire me as a guide because I probably would spend the whole 3 hours on one block, talking to people and going into people's homes and in this society in Havana, they're particularly warm and they want to share. So for as yourself, Jason, this is actually a fascinating culture. So yeah, no, I would probably just improvise and see what happens, and you would be surprised how that would be the highlight of the day.
Follow your nose, your ears, and your eyes, huh?
In your sense, yeah, all your senses are alive, and that's what makes this destination so unique. And it's a shame that our foreign policy seems to keep punishing this poor nation just because it's trying to reform itself or find its own identity and political system. But we seem to think that there's still some Khrushchev is still on the island with missiles pointing at us. So
Right.
that's
Well, let's talk about that for a minute. I think that a lot of
mhm.
people need to realize, though, at the same time, while there certainly can be some positive changes on that, people can still visit Cuba, which I think is important because many people
Yes,
think that it is completely closed. You have to be careful how you do it. It has to be done the right way. But you can still go there. You can still visit.
that's correct. That's correct. And for those that do private experiences or journeys as you do is actually very favorable because your itineraries are supporting the Cuban people, you're supporting the guides, and you're usually staying with things that are not owned by the government. So it's actually not as complicated if you use the license or the visa called Support for the Cuban People. Okay.
Great.
So on to the next picture I have for you guys. Pardon the technology here, but
That's all right.
okay. So now this could be in 4 or 5 different continents of around our beautiful planet, but this is back to what Jason introduced in my background image. This is actually in the Galapagos, and what I recommend is being in the water as much as possible because it tends to be much warmer than it is in most of our country. And I'm actually a competitive master swimmer, so this picture was
Is this you?
this is not me, but this is me taking the photo of someone
Okay.
that I just got out. I actually beat him in the race. I
So
just got out of the.
You wanted a picture. So you were so fast. You got out of the water. You came up here, and then you took his picture of the competitor. Huh?
Yeah. When he made it, he was not in the best of moods, but that's
No.
competition. But it
So
was about
that's
a mile
interesting.
swim, and
So you were
what
saying
was that?
what are you? You're a competitive swimmer?
I'm a competitive swimmer since I was 5, and I had a hiatus after college, but basically I started competing again about 9 years ago.
Wow, that's amazing. So how is the swimming in the Galapagos?
So swimming in the Galapagos is one of the most beautiful places to swim because life comes to you. Again, there's no fear. So you have a lot of fishes, sea lions, sea turtles, and in copious amounts. So it's not like once in a while. So it's a fascinating place to swim, and there's actually a tour operator that specializes in taking people that love swimming to this destination and others around the world that want to explore through swimming. That's an interesting.
Well, it's interesting. it looks like the water is probably pretty deep there. I only say that because you can see how clear the water is when you look at the boat. It just looks like
Yeah,
it's floating, like just, I mean, it is obviously floating, but you could see just right through the water.
yeah, and it's one of the uh, yeah, some of the best beaches in Ecuador are in this destination. So lots of swimming and lots of try to be in the water. That's what I suggest in this destination.
I
And
see
then I
why.
wanted to show you one last picture. Uh, 1 second. Sorry. Okay, so
Wow.
this is an interesting.
Did you take this picture too?
I did not. I did not take this picture. I bought it from Adobe stock.
Okay. All right, we'll let
so
it
so
go.
that's that. And why my fascination? First of all, my father was a lifelong birder, and he was a Midwestern Chicagoan.
Okay.
And some in my youth, sometimes he would just get this obsession with going to Central America from Chicago in a little bug. So ever since I was 3, we would take these long road trips to go to Central America and birding. And the reason he chose a bug is, especially the German bug back then, was that it was the only car that floated across the rivers of Honduras and Nicaragua. So we could throw, put a cord to the front of the bug and then throw it across the river, and the locals would just pull us across the river. There's no bridges.
What?
so
Seriously?
that was part of the
You
adventure of going birding with my father.
wait a minute. So so you drove a Volkswagen Bug down to the river, you threw a line across, and you literally just pulled the car across the river and it would just float across?
That's right. That's right.
That was
It's the
your
only
own
car that
theory.
floats. The German bug is the only car that would float across those rivers because the bridges were down.
Wow. I that is fascinating. I never even would have thought that that was an option. Do they still float? Do you know?
They do. They do. The interesting thing is that the bug was produced in three countries: Mexico and Brazil and Germany, and only the German version floats. That's another good factoid. So
Wow.
yeah,
Okay.
one of the few positive things that came out of the Hitler age, unfortunately. So if there was anything positive, that was one of the few ones. The bug.
So Eric, what about birding? Have you gotten into it, or is it one of those
I
things that your
have.
dad did it and you don't
Initially
care?
my father's long road trips made me kind of hate birding until I was about 30.
Well, that's what I
So
was wondering, because I could see some people end up growing to love the things that they did growing up, and other people grew to hate it. I actually grew up camping a lot and going tenting, and I have not been tenting in a very long time. But you have come to like birding then?
I think they are like the little angels of nature, and if you hear them, they're usually the first part of the natural world up in the mornings. And since I'm an early riser, I just love how they communicate and wake you up in the morning. So this photo is basically the plumage of an Amazon macaw, but it brings a lot of, it's incredibly beautiful because it goes so much with the colors of Latin America and the beautiful designs. And if you go around Brazil or Colombia, you will see that incredible, intense magnification of colors similar to this photo. So it epitomizes the what I consider the colors and magic of Latin America.
That's beautiful. So what's one of your favorite birds that you've come across, that you've seen?
Well, my favorite has to be the quetzal, which is it's a currency of Guatemala, and actually this was this was the outcome of one of the famous road trips that we made it to Costa Rica near the mountains of Panama, right on the border. And according to my father, who was a scientist and you know, he had quite a lifelong lister, I was actually the first one to identify the quetzal in Costa Rica. So by accident, I pointed a colorful bird with a tail to my father, and we identified the first species there. So that would have to be the first species. I mean, the first bird eye, and my favorite one so far.
That is fascinating. It's interesting you said that, because I was on a boat in Costa Rica. I was there a couple years ago, and all of a sudden this bird, I'm not a birder. I mean, I appreciate them, but you know,
Sure.
I wouldn't know what their
Perfect.
sounds is like. And I love seeing them. But so here we are on this boat. We happen to be there with a naturalist who is an expert in things like this. And this interesting bird literally landed on this small boat. And we're all looking at it. And I actually took a picture of it. I don't have it to share. I'll have to share it with you another time. Come to find out, he called some friends of his on the mainland, and it was the very first time that an Incan tern had ever been sighted in Costa Rica, and it happened to land on the boat that I was on. So there's my Costa Rican birding story. Never happened before or since, but that was fascinating.
Yeah, and yeah, I just to end the birding story. My father was before, about a few years before he passed. He was in the Gobi Desert of Mongolia,
Wow.
and he observed a very rare bird that he was in the middle of nowhere, and there was a rock, and he sat down kind of like to enjoy the setting. And a bird came up and started chirping and communicating with my father for about a minute and a half. So there's certain people that track birds, and if you have the ear, I'm sure, and the meditative effect of communicating with nature, I think they can also talk to you. So that's an interesting thing to share.
Fascinating.
Yeah, yeah. So I could continue sharing some more photos, but I think
Yeah,
out
that's
of respect
great.
of time.
Go ahead and stop there for a minute. But Eric, thank you so much. I had no idea, no idea you were such a good swimmer and good with birds. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, thank you. I could share many stories, but I think traveling to enriching my life's passions. So please travel, everyone. Don't stay at home.